Okay, DG, we'll dive right in. The battle for the victory bell this week at Wallace Wade Stadium, Saturday, 4 o'clock, 3-1 North Carolina at 4-0 Duke. This game on ESPN2. The Blue Devils opening up as a 3-point home favorite at Wallace Wade Stadium.
Yeah, I may spend the most time on this one out of all the national or regional or local games that we discussed today, Chris, just because it's two of the teams right here in our backyard in the Triangle. I think everybody knows Carolina has dominated this rivalry historically, winning more than 2/3 of the time, going way back into the century-plus machine. And the Tar Heels also have dominated this rivalry lately, winning all 5 head-to-head matchups against the Blue Devils during Coach Mack Brown's current tenure in Chapel Hill. But this time, Duke has the better record, 4-0 versus the Tar Heels 3-1, albeit a 4-0 mark against inferior opponents for the Blue Devils. Maybe more importantly, the Devils are playing with more confidence right now under their new head coach, Manny Diaz, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Remember that Mike Elko was a defensive-oriented coach these last 2 years in Durham before taking the Texas A&M job. Well, Manny Diaz is a defensive-oriented coach who these last 2 years was the defensive coordinator for some really good units at Penn State. So the Devils have a well-constructed plan on that side of the ball, and they've been executing that defensive game plan really well so far this season. Duke has given up an average of only 15 points per game. Now, it was against Elon, Northwestern, UConn, and Middle Tennessee State. Not one of those opponents is known for its dynamic offense, and those opponents' collective record, by the way, is 6 wins and 10 losses, and neither Duke nor any of those 4 opponents has defeated anybody of significance so far this season. So it's all a matter of context. Because UNC has an All-American running back in Omarion Hampton, and because the 5th-year senior quarterback, Jacoby Criswell, energized the Tar Heels' passing attack as they put up 50 points against James Madison last week in defeat. This will be the toughest challenge for that Duke defense so far this season. Carolina is coming off that embarrassing 70-50 loss at home to JMU. There were some irresponsible post-game reports that head coach Mack Brown had chosen to resign in the locker room after that game. And we'll talk about his status later in today's show, along with some other head coaches here in North Carolina. But the strangest part about the Tar Heels' 3-1 start is that in their 3 victories, their defense and special teams were mostly good, and their offense, besides Omarion Hampton at running back, was mostly holding them back. Well, in their one loss, obviously, that script completely flipped, totally flipped. They somehow put up 50 points with their 3rd-string quarterback, Jacoby Criswell, a guy who had never started a single game against an FBS opponent in his entire 5-year career, and he was playing behind an extremely inexperienced offensive line for Carolina, which we discussed earlier this year. That combination leading to 50 points actually implies good coaching by the offensive staff heading into the James Madison game. Yet, of course, the UNC defense absolutely melted down against a JMU offense, and this is what makes it especially crazy and hard to figure out. A JMU offense that, Chris, had managed only 13 points in its previous game against Gardner-Webb, an FCS opponent here in North Carolina. Now, how does JMU go straight from 13 points against Gardner-Webb to 70 points against the Tar Heels, the most ever scored against the Heels by an opponent at Kenan Stadium? I mean, credit to the Dukes, of course, but UNC also looked poorly prepared. There was literally a major missed assignment on the first defensive snap of the game that led to a lone quarterback keeper. The Tar Heel defense somehow lost the battle in the trenches to a group of 5 team, and in the end, they gave up more than 600 yards of total offense. There are, final thought on Duke Carolina, there are 2 really good running backs in this game. Of course, Hampton from UNC. For Duke, it's a guy named Star Thomas. You better be good if that's your first name, right? Star Thomas is a transfer from New Mexico State, and he's worked his way to the top of the Duke depth chart at running back. There are also 2 up-and-down quarterbacks in this game. Malik Murphy of Duke, the Texas transfer, and Jacoby Criswell of Carolina. They both throw the ball into trouble areas too often, risking turnovers, but they've both made some really, really nice and big plays down the field as well. I would guess that quarterback play is going to go a long way toward determining who gets the victory bell this year. And that also means that whoever protects their quarterback better and whoever harasses and disrupts the opposing quarterback better will probably win this game. Neither of these teams has a great offensive line right now. So whichever defensive front seven can better capitalize on that opponent's weakness is probably going to win. Carolina has really missed its star edge rusher, Kamen Rucker, who has been out with an injury. As we speak, it is not clear when Rucker is going to return to the lineup. Duke is the favorite here, in part because the Devils are at home, and because I think in part because they've just been the more consistent team on both sides of the ball so far this year.